Okay, I think we'll go ahead and get going with our presentation today. Thank you all for coming by our Study Abroad Fair Week. Thank you for coming to Packing and Prepping for Study Abroad. This is a fun one. I love talking about this part. Hopefully the presentation today will really get you excited about study abroad. That's kind of our design here, is just to get you thinking a little bit further beyond the application process and getting accepted, and that really exciting time between knowing you're going and actually going. So hopefully we can get you some good tips and tricks for preparing for your own study abroad journey. Here's where we're going today. We're going to do some introduction, pack and repack, travel tips, what's up, and then or what's next in the virtual lineup. But then for me, it's really important to answer the questions that you have, right? I want to be making sure that the information we're giving is relevant to you and what you want to know. So I encourage all of you to drop your questions in the chat box at any time throughout the presentation. If we can't answer them right on the spot there, we'll definitely leave plenty of time at the end to take all your questions and get you the information that you need for getting ready for your study abroad. So with that, I am going to introduce myself. I am Jacob Evis. I'm the study abroad recruiter here at U of A. My goal is to make sure that all students at U of A know that study abroad could be an opportunity for them, and really to encourage students to ask critical questions. Can study abroad work for me? Is this something I can take advantage of? And hopefully you find, like most of our students, that the answer is yes. I did my study abroad in Australia. I did a semester in Australia during my undergraduate program for political science. And my packing mantra, these are hard learned lessons. Less is more, pack twice, buy experiences. And I'll go ahead and have my colleague introduce herself.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. I am Mariah Nunes. I work with Jacob in the Study Abroad office. I'm the Curriculum Integration Manager, so I really care about the classes that you're going to be taking when you study abroad. But also, I am also a former study abroad alum. I guess that doesn't necessarily make sense. I am a study abroad alum, a current one, and I studied abroad in Orvieto, Italy. And some of you might have heard of our Orvieto, UA Orvieto or Arizona in Orvieto program. So that's the one that I went on in the summer term. And my packing mantra is leave room for souvenirs. And just like Jake, I think really the best souvenir is the experience and the memories, but there's also going to be some material items that are going to be really meaningful to you. I was just chatting with a student a few minutes ago and told her I have a painting that I bought in Orvieto hanging in my living room, and it's been there for like years now. So there are going to be really, really meaningful things that you find that you're going to want to bring them and incorporate them back into your life.
Wonderful. Yeah, Mariah, thank you for joining us today. Love to hear from all of you. Drop in the chat box where you'd like to go on abroad, and what's one item you absolutely will not be leaving without. Mariah, what's your one item that you wouldn't be leaving without?
Oh, you know what? This is a really good one, because the first thing that comes to mind is what I'm actually bringing home with me, which is not the point of this, but what I'm bringing home with me would be snacks from abroad. There's some really fun stuff to find, but I would say my neck pillow on the airplane. And I know that sounds a little bit cheesy, but that's a long flight for a lot of places. And I slept pretty much the whole time because I was really comfortable. And I know myself when I travel, and I know I need to be comfortable. So that was a really important thing for me. I haven't seen anyone introduce themselves in the chat, but we really want to know, who you are and where you want to go. Let's see. Oh, South Korea. I'll be bringing headphones. Yeah, that's going to be definitely a good one, Gabrielle. AirPods. We have a theme so far. Noise canceling headphones. You guys are all kind of channeling each other. I think we have a clear theme. So let's see what else.
Oh yeah, we are getting some great answers here. Okay.
Oh, Alyssa, I read your response. I would need my camera. I only traveled abroad back in the day. I don't know if you guys even remember the iPhone 5C. It was like the plastic one that came in different colors. That's the phone I had at the time, and all of my photos are super grainy, but they're really good memories that I still have. So I think a decent camera is probably a really important thing to think about if that's what's on your mind.
Nice. Yeah, thank you. Please keep those coming so we can all share where we want to go and what we can't live without. But let's jump right into this. Some packing tips here, right? And I will tell you, I'm going to be super vulnerable and open with you all. I was a horrible packer for my study abroad trip. I did a lot of the wrong things. And so these are hard learned lessons that I'm going to try and pass on to you. I know everybody kind of approaches travel and packing differently, but we've surveyed our past students, we've surveyed our study abroad staff, and these are some of the big tips that come out. But planning it out, right? Really doing your research to understand the location you're going, how long you're, like everything below this falls under the planning it out, right? Really thinking about the weather. You know, for myself, when I left here in February, it was winter. For any of our Arizona natives, I'm from Flagstaff. It was one of our biggest snow years up there in Flagstaff. And I left, got on a plane, flew to Fiji, and then on to Australia, middle of the summer. So I went from, 40 degrees in snow to 100 degrees in sun. But then I was in Australia long enough that it moved into their winter, right? And so I had to plan for both summer and winter clothing. So definitely, taking the time to just think this through. But one thing that I didn't do that I have since done for travel is pack and repack and then pack again, right? Mariah, did you do this when you were going on your study abroad or traveled overseas?
Yeah, I did. I spent several days practicing to pack, and it was because someone gave me that really, really good advice. And this little point that we have too about making lists, I'm just that type of person in every aspect of my life. I love checklists. It just makes my brain happy. And so I asked a lot of people. I had some friends who had studied abroad, and I would ask, my parents, like, think of everything I could possibly need. And I wrote it down and then really crossed out, like, I don't think I actually need half of this stuff. So the lists really helped me. And then I did exactly that. I saw what fit in my suitcase. And that really worked for me. So the repacking, I think, is a really great tip. So give yourself the time to do that. That kind of packing the day before is something I would certainly not recommend.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And this has really, like, I've learned to do this, and it really does help. And not necessarily, not always in just weeding out stuff you don't need, but getting it all in the right order, right? To get it into a well-packed bag. You also want to be considering your length of stay, right? Some of you might be considering our summer faculty-led programs, right? Our summer programs tend to be less classroom experience based and kind of more field experience based. So the likelihood is you'll be traveling more, or at least out and about during the day. Maybe you have a single base of operation, but you're traveling to sites. I know in Orvieto, they travel to like a buffalo mozzarella factory, or I think the popular thing in Orvieto, Mariah, you do this, is take the train down to Rome, right?
Yeah, multiple times. Rome is only about an hour away, so it's really easy to have a little day trip, and having that pack light mentality, I think, is a really, really great way to be able to actually do more and see more. And also, having a really good backpack or kind of a small carry-on so that you can be a little bit more mobile while you're abroad.
Yeah, and the general recommendation for any study abroad, summer, spring, year long, you should be able to carry all your luggage, right? Who knows what's going to happen now with all of our programs, with our partners. The arrival is prearranged. We're not just sending you out there to figure it out on your own, right? You will know exactly what the process is for how to arrive, how to get to your location, or how to get to your student housing. But life happens, right? Maybe somebody's delayed getting to you, maybe you missed the pickup, or you're just rushing to the train, right? Maybe you're trying to do a weekend trip during like a semester abroad. But you should be able to carry all of your luggage and plan to be able to haul it for, say, like 2 or 3 city blocks, right? That's kind of a good measurement for, did I pack too much? If you can't haul it, I would say if you couldn't take it from 4th Avenue all the way to campus along University, you've packed too much, right? Like that would kind of be my guide stick, based on Tucson. And yeah, pack light. Right. And this can be a tough one because we recommend, leaving things at home that you can pick up there, but you may not know exactly what it is that you can have access to. Right. And we've all done a good job here listing the things we can't live without. So those would definitely be the things that you'd start with. But doing some research, maybe asking your study abroad coordinator or asking any of the study abroad staff to connect you with past students that went on your program. They would be able to tell you for those summer faculty leds, connecting with the faculty member, they will have a really good insight what you can get on site and what you should bring with you. A common area is like toiletries. People have their personal preferences. If you have something you love, you should take that. But most places throughout the world, you can pick up things like toothpaste or shampoo. Maybe not on our Namibia faculty-led trip where you're out in the middle of the desert there. But a lot of our other locations, you can get everything that you need. Honestly, for me in Australia, the only thing I couldn't get was really good Mexican food. Right? Like that was the only thing. And I was calling up home, trying to convince my parents to send me chilies, send me good tortillas, but that, and of course they said no, which they should have. Nobody needs to be mailing that across the country. But yeah, Mariah, what about you? What, how was it in Orvieto? Because I know Orvieto is kind of a small classic Italian town. I would imagine getting like daily stuff could be a little difficult, but was it?
So I actually found, Orvieto, it is a super, super tiny town, but it has everything you need. And that's what makes it such a special experience. So there's pharmacies everywhere. If you need, toiletries that you might have forgotten, there's markets, groceries. I found that it was really, really easy to just, walk within 5 or 10 minutes and get anything I needed. But the one thing that really kind of came to mind, especially when Jacob was talking about only what you can actually carry. Everywhere in the town that I studied abroad is just really cobblestone streets. And there's not a lot as far as sidewalks go. It's certainly not smooth pavement. It's very beautiful to look at, but it's pretty difficult in some places to kind of wheel a really, really large suitcase behind you. It's certainly not impossible. So I don't want anyone to think, you can't pack what you need if you think that you need a little bit of a larger suitcase, but it's something to keep in mind. It was a little bit difficult. And especially those weekend trips, hopping on and off trains with a really, really large suitcase is something I can personally say is very difficult to do unless you've done it a million times. So pack light, be prepared for anything, but also really echoing what Jacob said is that if there is something that you really, really are going to need or like you cannot live without, I know I have my favorite sunscreen and it's the only one that I really, really like. I would bring that with me because I probably might not be able to find that abroad. So definitely a lot to think about, but there's certainly flexibility and really chatting with your study abroad coordinator about, recommendations for things you might not even be thinking about. Your coordinator has talked to a million students who have studied abroad and has a lot of great feedback that they can share with you.
Yeah. And then the last point there too, this goes into study abroad in general, right? To remember that you are a guest wherever you go, right? And you're a representative of the university of yourself and your community, and of the United States, right? And so, but it goes a long ways in being a good guest in that country to research the culture, right? We always recommend for students who are going on our programs, the majority of them are taught in English, right? Unless you're going to learn language, our programs are taught in English, but you should learn some of the local language, right? It really makes an impact on the locals you'll be interacting with to show that you've made the effort. But when it comes to the culture, it can have an impact on your clothing choices too, right? And you want to be respectful of that culture. Certainly, we want you to be you and have the study abroad experience that you want to have. But again, we are guests in these host countries. And so, and this could be simple things, right? Like, I know one of the common things going to Italy, going to Spain, is, a really old culture or like really old churches, right? I know in Rome, the Vatican is hugely popular in terms to visit. But think about what that means in terms of the clothing you would want to wear that day, right? Especially going to Europe, but really anywhere. Going to these cultural sites that have significant meaning to your host country, you want to make sure that you're doing the work and showing that you care, and really prepare for that. Now, for me going to Australia, really this didn't come into too much play. And fortunately for me, I was able to just kind of adapt the Australian kind of culture on the fly, right? I did my research to know that I didn't have to make too many clothing choices based on culture alone. Some more packing tips here. I like the first one. I'm going to kick this to Mariah because of her motto, leave room for souvenirs here. Mariah, did you buy an extra bag or take a half-empty suitcase for Italy?
I did actually none of the above. I decided to just sacrifice several t-shirts and a pair of shoes and certain things that I realized after the study abroad experience, I can live without these things because I really want to take this pound of pasta home and I really need room, for this painting. It was just a piece of paper, but it needed to go in my backpack and I wanted to protect it. And so I certainly overpacked. And in the moment when I was packing and preparing, I thought I was packing light. So really just be flexible with yourself. If you find later that, you found this really cool pair of leather shoes and you really want to bring them back and you might not have the room, you might have to just leave a pair of sandals that you had brought. I know I'm making kind of some of this stuff up, but that's what I ended up doing. I did have a backpack with me because, of course, I was going to school and I was taking classes and I knew that that's something that I needed to bring. And that ended up being completely stuffed to like max capacity by the time I was done. And also to Jacob's point on the last slide, this packing for layers, it goes a little bit more than just weather, right? You want to be prepared for the local weather. And do your research on where you're going and kind of get to know the atmosphere and the environment. But I found myself in many situations where, there was a large cathedral or kind of a monumental location that we were going to, and they were not letting people in if they were showing their shoulders. And that's a very common thing in many, many countries, specifically Italy. And so I had this really light, like chiffon. It was kind of like a button-down shirt, actually. So it was super compact in my backpack. It was probably like the size of my fist when it was all together. But I was able to just layer it on, go have that great experience. And then because I was there in the middle of the summer and it was quite warm, you could just take it off as soon as that trip or location we were kind of moving on from. So packing for layers means kind of being prepared for that, as well as, of course, weather. And it was really, really rainy when I was in Orvieto. It was kind of like their monsoon season, like we have here. So I actually brought a raincoat with me, a really, really lightweight one. So it wasn't super, super hot, but it definitely kept me dry. And that actually, in retrospect, that might be the one thing that I could not live without. I took that raincoat everywhere I went, and it was a really, really great thing that I had it. What about you, Jacob? Is there anything coming to mind as far as filling the void? Did you bring a lot of stuff home with you?
I did. I brought a lot of stuff home. I'm a huge book nerd, so I of course bought and brought back books, which is horrible. Books are bulky, they're heavy, and most of the time they just collect dust on the shelf, right? But yeah, I did. Maybe some clothes. I kind of went. For my clothes, I actually went very minimal, anticipating I would be buying clothes over there, right? And so I kind of went minimal with that, but also it's about the experience you want to have. I knew that I wanted to be doing a lot of hiking, backpacking, even camping. And so I sacrificed some stuff to have things that would be more helpful for that. But shoes is my big one, because no matter where you're going, you are going to be walking, right? And I will sacrifice a lot of things in order to have multiple shoe options, because as soon as your feet go, you go. If you can't walk, you can't get to class, you can't go, you can't, travel. You really put yourself out of the scene if you lose your feet, right? And you want to have shoes that cover all sorts of options. So for me, things that do double duty, right? So I have a nice pair of shoes that they pass in a professional setting, but they also have really good soles, and I could walk miles in them and still feel comfortable, right? So, or like, rain jackets is a really good one. If you have I have a rain jacket that actually looks like a dinner jacket. Like I could pull that off if I found myself in a place where they're saying I needed to wear a jacket to get in, or, just wanted to look a little nicer. So I really recommend looking at like sportswear, camp gear, stuff like that that's designed for this, like for minimalist use and multi-use. So that's kind of my recommendations. But one thing I do want to highlight here is medications. This is a very common question that we get. It's a good question. It's an important question. And one thing I'll note is you will have a pre-departure orientation prior to leaving on your study abroad trip. So this is after you've been accepted, you've moved through the application process, you're going. Your study abroad coordinator in our office will organize a pre-departure orientation for you, or you'll do it with our office. And they will talk more about medications. But the things, just quickly, the things to be thinking about is knowing what's legal in the country you're going to. Just because it's legal here in the US does not mean it's accepted in the country you're going to. Or if it is accepted, maybe it's an even higher level of documentation and paperwork that you have to, fill out and have with you. And so with this stuff, if there are medications that you absolutely need, you really need to be doing the advanced work and the research and communicating with your study abroad coordinator very clearly what your needs are, so that they can provide you country-specific information as it relates to medication. But documentation is your best friend. Getting doctor's notes. If you can get medication, like prescription medications, filled out for your entire time you're going to be overseas, so that you don't have to go looking for it. But even then, you should still know, what if you lose it? Can you get what you need over there? Can you have it shipped in from back home, right? These are all very important questions that you want to be asking yourself. And you don't want to assume that everything's okay just because you can use that medication here in the United States, right? This is one of the big ones I know, recently in Arizona with the whole legalization movement. Guarantee you, any country you're going to does not think the same about that, right? Whether you have a prescription medication or not, I can guarantee you every country that you were thinking about treats it very differently and has very harsh and stiff sentences or for that. So something that we want to note specifically for, here in Arizona and the change in the environment. When it comes to your departure, there's some things you want to think about too. Again, documentation is your friend and copies are your friend. You want to have backup copies of anything that is important to you. When you travel, you want to make sure you keep your important documentation as safe as you possibly can, okay? For a lot of our semester and year-long programs, you're going to need to get a student visa. For our summer trips or our shorter semester-long ones, usually under 90 days, you don't necessarily need a student visa. You can enter on a tourist visa. But again, that's something you would want to clarify with your study abroad coordinator. And for each of our program applications, there will be a document kind of outlining the visa process. So you want to make sure you read that very carefully. Yeah, arrive early. Mariah, did you arrive early for your study abroad in Orvieto?
I arrived very early to the airport, not necessarily early as in like days before the program started. And I actually had a 6-hour flight delay in my connection flight. And so, you know, be prepared for anything is kind of like the main takeaway with a lot of these things. But, you know, I was really, really glad, not necessarily to have 6 extra hours to wait, but really that I had the time, especially before my first flight. I did fly out of Tucson. I grew up in Tucson, so I spent my summers here. And so, you know, Tucson's a smaller airport. And so sometimes there can be some changes to our flights here. And so it was really, really, I think, beneficial. And also, I'm a little bit of a nervous flyer, which I think a lot of people are. So it gave me the time to not feel rushed and you know, going to the airport knowing I'm not going to be home for 6 weeks is kind of a daunting thought in the moment, but it's also so exciting. So giving myself that extra time definitely helped me just kind of, you know, calm my nerves a little bit, make sure I had everything I needed. If there's something you need last minute that the airport might be selling, you know, that's something you can always go, you know, give yourself the time and grab. Yeah, I definitely arrived super early for my flights.
Yeah, and for me, I arrived 2 weeks early just to get settled, to know how to get to class, you know, so if that's something that you can arrange, you know, for your study abroad program, then I really recommend that you do that. And you can plan to stay on too, right? That's also a very popular option. But you have to, what you want to know is what are the regulations? Because you might be on a student visa, but then when you're done with your studies and you want to travel around Europe, you know, what are the regulations? Can you stay on your student visa or do you need to switch over to a tourist visa? Okay. And most of that's pretty well understood and, you know, something that your study abroad coordinator can give you information about, but it's definitely questions you want to be answering.
Mm-hmm. To the last point too about converting currency before you leave the country, that's something that I did. And it's really, really important to kind of know your bank's policies as far as, you know, like international ATMs. And, you know, I use a smaller credit union. So then they were like, nope, we don't do any international anything. And it was really, really important for me to know that ahead of time so I could set up some other arrangements before I traveled abroad. So, you know, talk to, of course, your bank and learn what their policies are. And a lot, I know many students, you can get a, you know, prepaid Visa card that has a few $100s on it. If that's something that you want to do, with it, you know, it's got a set amount of money on it and you can use it at ATMs for cash, and those things you can get through your bank. So, there's a lot of options you might not, know about. So I certainly didn't, but your bank will tell you like, here's exactly what we recommend for you. And that's going to be a really, really important thing. And exchanging currency ahead of time. I found there's a Wells Fargo near my house that had euros. So that's where I went. But I had to call a few places to find out where, if they had euros. And a lot of the times the answer was no. So you have to give yourself a little bit of time to do some of this research, but this is part of the packing experience and thinking about currency, international currency. So, yes, that is definitely something I recommend, is give yourself extra time, like weeks for that, just to make sure that you're not doing anything last minute.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to make sure we get to all our tips and get to your questions. Please, as you have them, drop questions in the chat box here. We definitely have recommendations on what goes in your carry-on and what goes in your checked bag. You know, all the important stuff that you can't live without, right? Like absolutely live without, not the things you think you can't live without, but absolutely need to go in your carry-on bag, right? And for me, when I'm traveling anywhere in, domestic or international, I like to make sure that whatever's in my carry-on will get me through, 2 to 3 days without my checked bag, right? Because airlines lose luggage all the time. And I guarantee you the big you have for study abroad is going to be too big to take on carry-on, and you're going to have to check it. Maybe for the shorter summer trips, you could get away with just a carry-on bag, which would be great. I absolutely recommend that if you can. But if you have to split your stuff up, you make sure that it's the important stuff and things that'll get you through 2 to 3 days on site before they can, get your check bag to you if they happen to lose it. We do have here, drink all the water. It's good to stay hydrated while you're doing plane travel. But the caution there is, of course, depending on where you land, you'll definitely want to make sure from your coordinator, your faculty lead, our local contacts on the ground, that it's okay to drink the water there, right? There can be, countries where, it's really recommended you stick to bottled water, and that'll be something covered in your pre-departure orientation specific to your program. Yeah, and just traveling in general, like airplane travel, international travel is rough. Like even if it goes smooth, it's long plane flights, time zone changes. Commercial airlines are kind of designed to take it out of us, right? They don't put a bunch of oxygen into the cabin, so it makes you tired. You get jet lag, and so even on the best day, air travel and international travel is just rough on. And so you want to make sure that you're really well prepared to handle that. And two, that you're asking the questions: what does it look like when I land? Right? Who am I looking for? Who's there to meet me? How do I get to my housing? A lot of students ask us, can we travel with people who are going on the trip? And absolutely. A great way to do that is during your pre-departure orientation, or just let your study abroad coordinator or your faculty lead know, hey, I'd like to reach out to the other participants on the program and see if I can, if anybody else is on the same flight as me. Because not everybody is, required to travel together. Yeah, give your information to your coordinator and they'll pass it along to the group. I know a lot of students will set up, WhatsApp groups ahead of time and just kind of connect, and then it makes it really easy once you're on the ground. So, just some things to keep in mind as you navigate international travel. Whether you're a seasoned professional or this is your first time, international travel is not easy, right, Mariah?
Yeah, I mean, to your exact point about staying in touch with your study abroad coordinator and knowing the details of what is going to happen when I land in my destination and who is going to be there, who am I looking for? Since I mentioned I had a 6-hour delay on my connecting flight from Chicago to Rome, I landed several hours after I was supposed to. But the person that was there on the ground waiting ready to go, waiting for me, she already had my flight number because I had communicated all of that to her. And she knew my flight was delayed. And of course, there was nothing either of us could do about it. And that just helped make the experience a lot more seamless. So communicate with everyone that you're involved with in your study abroad experience, just to help smooth out any unexpected bumps that you might find along the way. And I do want to say too about the customs experience, especially when you're purchasing your flights, make sure if you have those connecting flights that there's some time in between. I spent a longer amount of time in customs when I flew home to the US than I did on my connection on the way there. And that was something I didn't expect, but I guess it makes a little bit of sense if you think about it. But give yourself the time, because if your connecting flight, is only an hour after you land, you might be still in customs. So it's okay. I know the flight is already so long and that travel day is already so long, but it's okay to give yourself some extra time in between, because you might actually be really, really thankful that you have it and you don't have to feel rushed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, because what happens as soon as you start rushing is when you start losing things, right?
Mhm.
Way you lose your phone, so it's really good to make sure you build in a lot of time there. Some more tips out here too. Again, we kind of talked about like being a guest in your host location, right? This is kind of part of the experience, right? This is one of the great reasons to do study abroad is to be a part of the culture that you're going to go visit, especially for students that are looking at longer term programs where you're just going to be living and operating day to day there. Certainly, you're going to be interacting with culture on our shorter summer programs. It'll look a little different than a semester or a year long, but the same rules and courtesies apply. And then again, when in doubt, ask, right? Ask questions. There's nothing wrong with asking questions, and we want to make sure that you get the information that you need. So again, I'll remind you, drop your questions in the chat box if you have them. Oh yeah, do you need a visa for your summer in Orvieto?
No, it was only it was about 5.5 weeks. So the visa requirement, I believe, Jacob, you can tell me if I'm wrong, since I did not have one, I'm not an expert on it, is 90 days or longer, correct? To have a visa?
That's a general rule of thumb is 90 days or fewer, then you don't need a visa. You can operate on a tourist visa.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And you know what, just since I'm thinking about my experience in Italy, there was a few notes. I don't know if anyone noticed it, but I want to make sure we mention it. Electrical outlets are not all created equal across the world. So if you have items to plug in, like a phone charger or anything of that nature, it might not fit in the electrical outlet, and it definitely uses different wattages and other electrical, components I don't know the right terminology for. So do some research on where you're going. Adapters are very easy to find on Amazon or kind of, wherever. You can do some online shopping. I recommend having an outlet adapter if you need one ahead of time. I remember, landing in the airport and immediately plugging my phone in and things like that. So it's really, really great to have something like that on hand. And also, if you were to plug in kind of the wrong electrical plug into an outlet, you might shut off the power in the building that you're in, use the wrong things. And
is this personal experience we're talking about here?
It happened one time. It was one time. It was a hair dryer. Just don't use hair dryers. Like, let your hair air dry if you can. But these are other people's homes that you might be staying in as an apartment that you're renting, or if you're doing a homestay. And it kind of goes along that very first note we mentioned about just being respectful. And you're representing, another country, and accidents 100% happen. And these are like the kindest people for letting you live in their home, and they will understand. But try to accommodate, rules and things like that. So if they tell you when you arrive, please don't use, a hair dryer or whatever, use this instead. Try to follow along that. Because it was embarrassing. I will be very honest with you.
And we do have a really good top tips for Wildcat World Travel Guide that you can get on Start Your Journey page, or if you fill out our information form on our fair page, you can get this as well. And I drop both those links in the chat box, but we cover the electrical outlets, money stuff. So just a really good guide to kind of help you think about a lot of the stuff that we've been talking about here today. So I want to make sure we get to your questions. I know we've got just over 15 minutes left scheduled. I will plug our Instagram account. It's a really great place to start dreaming big, seeing where other Wildcats have gone. We had a really great photo contest from over the summer. You can see some of those photos on there. We are wrapping up our fair week here this evening. We have one more session after this. If you have parents or other family members that might be interested in learning about study abroad and what that means for you as the student, feel free to send them the invite. 6 to 7, we're going to be doing info session specifically for parents and other family members. So definitely something to send back to mom and dad if they can hop on Zoom. And then we're doing Party at Global tonight, 7 to 9 p.m. Come on by the Global Center here. We're on Park between University and 6th. And we're going to do, we got food, prizes, music. So yeah, come on by for that. We'll all be hanging out here this evening. So I really recommend that. Yeah, and I talked about that and I talked about that. So let's get this shared screen turned off and get your questions here. Yeah, and Gabrielle, thank you for reposting that. Great question. Generally speaking, you can do this, right? I can tell you that it'll probably be expensive. I did this. You know, you can mail boxes home. And it just depends on how far out you are, the country you're in, what the mail system looks like. I would recommend don't put anything that you really love in the mail, right? This would be for your second tier souvenirs, right? Not the thing for mom and dad to thank them for supporting study abroad. Right, this is for you know, the family friend or something, because you know, mail gets lost all the time, and when you include international mail there, it's even more of an opportunity. Yes, there will be a recording of this Zoom. We will have it posted up on our YouTube page. You can check it out there. We'll also try and have it hosted on our FAIR page for next week as well. Yeah. Do you ever see? Oh, yes. Great question about bringing family members on study abroad. It is not unheard of. It is not what I would describe as common, but it's not unheard of. And it will be highly dependent on the program you're doing, the length of the program. But yes, I have seen this happen before. It's a popular option with our like Europe programs, especially, or our summer programs, where family members will fly out towards the end of your study abroad and join you for, you know, travels around there. I hear this all the time with our students that are going to Europe, especially. You know, their family members either accompany them as they get started on their study abroad or join them later. In terms of being on study abroad itself, my key recommendation there is just to understand exactly what it is you're there to do. Right? And it can be a little distracting if your attention's pulled in two directions. You have your family with you and you're trying to earn credit for this class, right? And so, you know, as with everything I talk about study abroad, you want to establish your goals and what it is you're trying to accomplish. You know, and this goes into the packing and the planning. But yes, I would say it just adds an extra layer of thought that you need to, you know, do. But bringing family with you can be possible, but it is program specific. I will say that.
One thought that I just want to share too, I don't know if a lot of people know this, is that someone who might not be a U of A student can apply if it's something that they're interested in doing. You don't have to be a U of A student to go on one of our trips. You can apply as a non-degree seeking student and study abroad, and that's, you know, that's all you have to do, and then that person would earn academic credit, and it might be beneficial maybe if they're a student somewhere else, or it can transfer, but that's always an option too, that not a lot of people are aware of, is that you can always apply to be a participant on the program even if you're not a U of A student. And you know what, too, Maya, you can ask your study abroad coordinator, because for program specific information, and your coordinator can certainly help share information about that too.
Yeah. Good question here about banking. You know, this is a tough one. And you know, there's kind of a couple of levels of advice that I have, and it really is dependent on how long you're going to be out. I personally opened a bank account in Australia because I was going to be there for 5 months, and I wanted a local bank account with a local debit card to avoid all fees. And honestly, it might seem weird, but that was a fun cultural experience for me. Like just going into a bank in a foreign country and opening a bank account, right? It was the first time I had done it without my parents. And, you know, and then it made it really easy to just transfer large sums of money from my US account to my Australian bank account. I had no withdrawal fees. You know, I picked a bank that had ATMs all over Australia. In my experience, no, my credit union would not have helped me find other banks to, that would work better overseas. They're all in competition for for us as customers. So yeah, my credit union certainly didn't provide me with other ones. But I know the rise in online banking has been a huge help to international travel and to study abroad. So that's also something you can look into. And really, it's just understanding what your needs are, and also asking questions of your faculty lead, your coordinator, or past study abroad students that went to your location. What is the culture around money where you are at, right? And to highlight this, I can give the example of some places, they just use cash. Like they are just cash. They have credit cards, they have debit cards, but nobody's using them. Everybody's paying for things in cash because that's just culturally what's expected of you. But some places don't. Some places are the complete opposite, where you pull out cash and they look at you like you're crazy, right? They want to see a credit card or debit card, right? Not that they wouldn't accept cash, but that's just how that country operates. For me, in Australia, like I said, my local debit card got me everywhere I needed to be. And then I had a US-based credit card that I used for emergency purposes or intermittently. You can get you can get currency here in the US from some of the major banks. I don't think my credit union does it, but I know I went to Wells Fargo and they will get you euros or any of the major currencies well in advance. I recommend doing that. Don't convert at the airport. If somebody tells you to convert at the airport, I really wouldn't take that advice, because the airports charge you an arm and a leg to convert money. And then the other thing is it just kind of puts a target on your back, right? There you are standing at the currency counter handling cash. And yes, airports tend to be more secure places, but any good criminal worth their salt, they're going to be able to, see you coming. And so I really recommend that you convert currency ahead of time. And then think about having more secure things on site, a local bank account or a really good credit card with no international fees or something like that. Let's see here. I want to make sure I get all of these questions here. Oh yeah, for the session at 6, no, you don't need a U of A email. You do have to have an email registered with Zoom, but you should be able to log in with any email there. Yeah. Yes, and you are automatically entered to win our scholarship for $1,000 on study abroad by being here today. So if you logged into this session, I have your information on my Zoom report, and you will be entered to win our scholarship. So hopefully it's one of you all, right? $1,000, that's a plane ticket to Europe, maybe, right? A cheap ticket. That won't get you to where I went, Australia, for sure. But it'll definitely get you down the road. So yes, being here today, you're automatically entered to win. Was it easy to close the account? Yes, it was. Once I had a bank account open, it was very easy to close it. Let's see, if I don't know, open account over there. Yeah, I mean, I definitely wouldn't have left an open account. That wouldn't be my recommendation. And it was the same, it was just the same process. I went back in at the end of my 5 months and closed my account out, pulled out all the money that was left in there, and then used that to, for my travels home. So, and again, that was pretty straightforward in Australia. It will vary country to country as to how easy it is to navigate the banking system. Yes, the scholarship is valid for any U of A study abroad program. Yeah, so the one that you entered today by being here is valid for summer. Okay, we've got a couple more minutes here. Is there any other questions that myself or Mariah can answer for you? One thing I'll note, because I know money is a huge question mark, huge unknown. One thing we're not used to here in the US, but I think it might soon be changing, is we all are very used to having PIN numbers for our debit cards, right? You go to the ATM to pull money out of your account and you use a PIN number, or you go use your debit card at the store and it asks for your PIN number. When you use a credit card, that generally is not the case in the US, right? I can't think of the last time I was asked for my PIN number for my credit card, not my debit card. But there is a PIN number associated with your credit card. You may not know what it is, and so I would call your bank and set that up. But I have been in, I believe it was actually in England, where I was trying to buy some dinner with my credit card, and I didn't know what that PIN number was. Luckily, I had cash as a backup and was able to, get that taken care of, and then, coordinate with my bank to get a new PIN number set. But we just got the chips in the US. They've been using chips. They were using chip cards in Australia way back when I was there. And so I think soon we'll be seeing PIN numbers and chips here in the US, but just a small little piece of advice that I ran into that I think is helpful to other students. No, you don't need to do anything else to enter the scholarship. Just by logging in today, you are entered for the scholarship. Oh yeah, here's a good one, Mariah. I'd actually be curious about you and Orvieto. What things were provided, like what basic essentials were provided for your housing? Did you have bedding and towels and kitchen stuff there?
Yeah.
Things you needed to buy?
Yeah, so I stayed in an apartment and I had 3 roommates. They were other girls from the U of A. And so we each had, we had, twin size beds in 2 different rooms. And we actually had like a really awesome apartment. It had this loft upstairs where we would hang out. It was really cool. But the owner of our she was really, really nice. And she kind of gave us the rundown right when we first got there. Each of the apartments in Orvieto are owned by different local people. So she had someone came in once a week and they told us they're going to come, on Tuesday afternoons. They changed all of our linens. They gave us fresh towels. It was a really, really kind of amazing setup. And I think that was actually quite the norm for the Orvieto apartments. Of course, everything is going to be different, but we did have a washing machine in our apartment as well. So if we needed anything like that, of course, to wash our clothes, we had that all there. So we had a full kitchen, and it was a really great little setup. I will say one kind of culture shock moment that I had is washing machines are common, but dryers are not in other countries. So we had a clothing line, we saw all of each other's clothes out to dry, and that's just super, super, super normal. And as you're walking kind of around, and I'm sure that this is the case for many European towns, but there's just clothing lines everywhere, but it's really part of the experience. And, we would hang our U of A t-shirts, and it was just kind of a cool thing, even though in the beginning I was a little bit surprised and just didn't expect it because it's not something that I had experienced before.
And I had the same experience in Australia with the dryer. We hung clothes out on the line, but I didn't go through U of A. I was at a different university, and my program didn't have like arranged housing, so I had to arrange it myself. And so I showed up and had to purchase all my bedding, pillows, and things like that. Which was not great, just have to spend that extra money. I ended up just spending the semester using my sleeping bag for the most part, just to save some money. But you want to, that's a really great question. I'm glad that question was asked, because that's that's kind of one of those daily things, and you want to know what you need when you arrive, and then 2, asking the question where you can get the stuff that isn't provided, right? For me, my international office at my Australian university had a list of places where we could go shopping for all of that type of stuff. So definitely check during your pre-departure orientation if there's a packing list specific to your program, and that's a great place to start. Mm-hmm. Excellent. Well, we're just about out of time, and I believe we've got all of our questions taken care of here. Mariah, any last tips, tricks for our students here?
You know what? Since you guys are still here, I did one thing that I should have mentioned earlier. It's really important when you're traveling internationally, and I know we only have a minute, so I will be very quick. Some kind of pickpocketing and, that is actually quite a common thing when you're abroad. So be very aware of your surroundings. If you're sitting at a table outside, don't have your cell phone just sitting on the table. Keep your items close to you. And I definitely recommend, if you're the type of person who likes like a tote bag or kind of like a wide shoulder bag, bring one that has a zipper. Zippers are important, so no like open pockets that anyone can easily reach into. I think is a very important thing to think about if you're going shopping for like bags and luggage. Keep that in mind. That's my final for everyone.
Yeah, I really like that. Yeah, that's a really great point, Mariah. Yeah, and to that, my advice will be to look up from your phone, right? And we all are we're very tied to our phones these days. They're not even phones anymore, right? They're computers, and they do a lot for us, and they are an amazing resource for international travel. I mean, smartphones have really changed the game. I have booked flights, canceled flights in the lounge at the airport. I arranged hotels, taxi, everything. It's wonderful. But when you get out there, eyes up, head on a swivel, right? And that's just to take in the experience too, but it will keep you safe. It'll keep you aware, but you want to just experience it sometimes. And I know I might be sounding like an old man at this point, but there really is something to leaving the phone in your pocket and just taking it in. But I walk around campus here every day, and so many students, and I'm guilty of this too. I'm not trying to shame anyone. I walk around looking at my phone as well. Everybody with the earbuds now, like that's not great. You want to be able to hear everything, but yeah, just keep your eyes open, keep your head up, and really take in this powerful experience that you're going to be going on. And certainly take photos. Like I encourage that. You want to relive those memories. And with the cloud and, storage is cheap. You can take 1 million photos, and I encourage you certainly to do that, but also take in the experience. And with that, I think I'll just thank you all for coming and joining us. I hope that this was, this wasn't designed to be exhaustive, but just at least get you thinking, packing and planning for study abroad. As you go on your trips, we'll get you again when you do your pre-departure orientation. Get it really dialed in, specific to your location. But Mariah, thank you for joining me for this.
Of course.
This is one of my favorites.